Oh, yeah. Welcome in, everybody. This is Cream of the Crop, a fantasy hockey podcast presented by Apples and Ginos. We are number one in dubs per 60. That's confirmed. Well, I don't know. Actually, my guest might have something to say about that, but that's fine. Follow me on Twitter /X at Blake Creamer AG. And while I've got you, I do have to hit this again. Apples and Ginos has released a fantasy hockey draft guide. You need to go check it out. All right. It's available as a standalone purchase in the Apples and Ginos Patreon. So the link is in the description. It's a beautiful document. 141 pages, all 32 team reviews, sleepers, busts, ADP values, betting articles, 0G, all those goodies that you need to smash your draft. All right. So definitely check that out if you feel like supporting us here at A&G and if you like winning. All right. But that's not why you're here. You know why you're here. You're here to do battle. You're here to watch an epic battle between one industry legend and just some random guy in his basement. And I want to introduce my esteemed opponent here. He's a writer for Sportsnet and the co-host of the Sleepers and Keepers Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Sportsnet's Michael Amato joins me today to put me through my paces. Michael, how you doing today?
Doing well, Blake. How's it going over there?
I'm having a nice time. Buddy, I basically did fantasy hockey as a full-time job this summer, and I wasn't hating it. All right. Nice. Can I just do fantasy hockey as a full-time job? Is that what you do? I mean, damn, like this is amazing. Can I just do what you do?
That's the dream. No, it's still not full-time for me, but yeah, it's if you can do something you love, they say it's always a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. It's cliche, but it doesn't feel like work. You sit down and you strap in for 10 hours in front of your computer, and then you're like, what the hell just happened? You stink. You're all disheveled. I mean, maybe not you, but me, I don't know. Is that sort of your process too? Because you just released your 250 top fantasy hockey players there. So what was that process like, Mike?
Yeah, so it's something I work on over every summer. And it's just kind of like a labor of love. I really started probably like 4 or 5 days after free agency, just when the dust kind of settles there. And then, it's not full time for me either. So I end up just kind of doing maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day. And then by the time early September hits, it's usually there. So I usually basically the first thing I do is I just make the list I usually do like up to, let's say 275, 280. So I can kind of decide on the final 250. And then once I have the list pretty much in order, I'll start doing the write-ups, which takes the longest time. And then, over the course of the summer, a little bit of things will change, right? Like we got some news, obviously, like the offer sheets and a couple trades or whatever, different stuff like the Ascara thing, like that stuff can all kind of play into it. So you're always kind of moving stuff around. But at some point, you kind of you've been looking at it for so long and you're like, okay, I just got to get this thing out because I can keep tweaking it forever. But yeah, we'll see. Sometimes I do like an updated one in a couple weeks, like if there's a lot of stuff going on at training camps or whatever, but yeah, it's a long process, but it's fun.
Well, you did an amazing job, buddy. I love that. Was a great read. And it never ends, buddy.
Yeah.
Like I did my projections. Obviously, Nate and I do our projections. It's the same thing, like, over 250 players. And and then people are like, well, are you going to update this? It's like, yeah, I probably should because there's so much crap going on. So yeah, I mean, we're going to have like version 3 or 4 on our projections. It's just, it never ends. You know what I mean? And then,
you inevitably it came out on Wednesday, and then I think yesterday, like the Luke Hughes news comes out, and you're like, oh, okay, that could kind of impact something.
Yeah.
I think last year it was the same thing. It was like 2 days after I released it, the Vasilevsky like surgery came out, and he's going to be out, and I was like, oh, that would have really changed my whole goalie rankings.
Use that information.
But, yeah, that's the way it goes.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into it here because I want to. We got a battle to do here, Mike. All right, and just so you know, I've got your list up here just to make my selections. I'm just going to go off your list, to be honest, because I think that's probably the right thing to do if I want to win. So, anyways, I'm going with that. Okay, so I'll give you again the basic idea here for the ADP battle. ADP equals average draft position. All right, so. Mike and I are going to be looking at 2 players at similar draft positions, and we're going to decide which player we would take at that time and why. And in terms of a league format, we're just going to go, Mike, with like a basic points league with a little bit of banger weighting, similar to Cupful, something like that, or goals worth more than assists, some power play points, stuff like that. Does that sound good?
Yep, works for me.
All right. We're ready to do battle. This is medieval times. Oh, yeah. Did you ever see Cable Guy? know what I'm talking about here, Mike? Is that before your
I
time?
have seen Cable
Oh,
Guy.
okay. All
No,
right.
it was actually I don't know where it was. A couple of weeks ago, it was on, maybe at my in-laws' place. It was on the TV, and I was watching it
Okay.
for like 10 minutes. Believe it or not, it's a random reference there.
Oh yeah. Well, fun fact,
But.
I really believe that Cable Guy is the movie I've seen more than any other movie in my life. There was a
Oh,
time,
okay.
like, in my early 20s where I would watch it once a week.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I love Cable Guy. It's my favorite Jim Carrey movie. I could pretty much recite the entire thing, and I will. You know what? Maybe I'll tack that on to the end of the podcast here. I just want to respect your time, but I need to get
All
that
right.
out. All right. Anyways, I'm digressing. We got to let the battle go here. All right. So first pick we're going to look at here, Mike, is we're in round 1. We're starting our draft. We got pick 8, and yeah, we're kind of a tier down from the top group there. And we're looking at Kirill Kaprizov or Mikko Rantanen. And this is a really interesting one because we've had discussions about this in our Discord. I really feel like these two players are pretty damn similar. So who are you taking at pick 8, Cap or Rantanen?
So I kind of agree with you. They're super similar, almost like a coin flip, but I went with Rantanen. I just think he's like, I'm splitting hairs, I guess. But I think he's probably a little bit safer than Kaprizov. I think I had Rantanen at 7 in my rankings, but and Kaprizov at 10 or 11. So really close. But yeah, I guess from when I say he's a little bit safer, I guess I look at the Wild's roster and I look at Colorado's roster. I think Colorado has just a little bit more high-end talent, obviously. Like Rantanen is going to play a lot with McKinnon and probably a fair bit with McCarr too at 5-on-5 and on the power play. So, and maybe Landeskog comes back and finds something there too. So when I look at sort of the Wild, I like a lot of I like Eric Sinek, I like Boldy, but sometimes they don't play those guys together with Kaprizov all the time. So again, I don't think Kaprizov is a bad pick or anything, but I would just give a slight edge to Rantanen.
Yeah, I mean, there's no wrong answer on really any of these, I think, but this one in particular, it's like these guys are so close, it's ridiculous. For my projections, I actually projected them both for 109 points on the dot, like with Rantanen getting like 0.4 points more or something like that. So, I mean, they're really close, but for me, I'm taking a ride with Cap this year, I think, at pick 8. I agree with what you said there about Rantanen being very safe. I think like his environment is ridiculous. We already know what to expect there. I think with him, like, and we're looking at 50 goals, 100 points, probably like, perennially he's going to be in and around that point every year. Right. And he gets a ton of minutes. But to me, I feel like Cap had a down season. Like one of the things that I noticed with Cap was his IPP was much lower and than it has been in his first few years there. And I think that's something to sort of consider, right? Like obviously if his IPP is higher, that's his individual points percentage. For anyone who doesn't know, that means that's the percentage of points that he's in on, right? And for his first 3 years, 89%, 83%, 75% 2 years ago, and then last year 65%. So I've sort of projected that to go back up, and I think there's a little bit of headroom there with his shots as well. So I think Cap is I'm much higher on Cap this year than I am on Rantanen. I feel like the ceiling might be higher with Cap. And plus, if everything is the same with these two players, I think Cap he's a little bit better with the peripherals, more shots and things like that. So it's a slight edge to Cap and maybe kind of a fun pick. I don't know. I find Rantanen to be like a really boring, safe pick in the first round, but you're never going to feel bad about getting Rantanen. It's like, it feels like a consolation prize, but it's not. The guy's a beast. Like I've got him projected for 109. So I don't know. Where do you see Cap this year? Because I think in your rankings, you said you see him close to 100 points. Is that right?
Yeah, I could easily see him getting 100 points. I kind of, like you said, I see both of those guys finishing within a couple points of each other either way. I kind of agree with you about like the upside thing with Kaprizov. It's probably higher. Like there's probably a world where everything goes right. Like let's say he plays with Boldy and Boldy has a breakout. Maybe they connect and he has Kaprizov ends up with a lot more points than we thought. But I just think there's also something to be said about, Kaprizov doesn't have as much maybe talent around him, but maybe that can also tell you like he's still a very productive player without that. So maybe if some of these guys like Boldy and who knows, Rossi or somebody starts taking some steps forward, that might just end up helping him. So I really I don't think you can really go wrong with this one. I think it's just kind of whoever, like some people, it might just come down to like draft style. Like I'm a more like in the first 20 draft picks, I'm more like safe. Like I'd rather make sure any risk I take, I want to take it further down the draft. Whereas some people will look at Kaprizov and say, yeah, maybe he ends up like having a career year, breaks out. I'm gonna take him a couple spots higher than he is. So yeah, I don't really think there's a wrong answer here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point too. And one thing I do want to say about Cap is his ADP on Yahoo right now is still pretty low, or like he's at 14.
Yeah.
So you could technically draft both these guys. You know what I mean? You get Rantanen at like 8, and then it comes back around and you pick up Cap if he's there. I mean, that would be ridiculous. And yeah, another thing on Cap too is like, I like you said, he's kind of the only one there, and I really feel like not that Rantanen needs McKinnon, because he's proven himself to be like sustainable even without McKinnon. I dug in on that. Like his production without McKinnon is fine, but Cap is kind of the straw that stirs the drink there in Minnesota, and he's going to get every opportunity, right? Where not that Rantanen won't, but he's not the main play driver even on his line, right? That's McKinnon. Whereas Kaprizov, everything should be going through him. So I like that for fantasy. I think they're both amazing picks, so you can't go wrong there.
Yeah, I also think too, like, you kind of touched on it. Like you might be able to get him like Kaprizov a little bit later.
Yeah.
So whereas I think like Rantanen has slightly more name recognition. So like if you took like Kaprizov, let's say at 7, like I don't think Rantanen will be there. At 12 or 13. But the other, if you flipped it, maybe there's a potential to do that. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, interesting thought. All right. We like Rantanen, we like Cap. It's all good to go there. All right, we're moving on, and we're in round 3, and we're looking for some D. All right, giggity, we got to get some D, and it's happening right now. And we're looking at 2 of the top tier, or just below the top tier defenseman here in Evan Bouchard or Roman Josi. So around pick 25, the start of the 3rd round. Who are you liking there, Mike? Bouchard or Josi?
Again, another one, I think splitting hairs, but I did go with Bouchard. I think I've got Bouchard 21 in my rankings, Josi 24. So again, super close.
Yep.
I think for me, it's just, I think that Oilers power play is like so prolific. Bouchard's going to be on it. And I kind of think Bouchard might even have like another year to get to. So I think he could potentially be like a 90-point defenseman in that kind of Quinn Hughes and Makar territory. So I'm hoping for that. Josi, we've seen him kind of, I don't want to say he's up and down. He's very solid, but he had that one down year a couple years ago. And now like I'm kind of interested to see with Stamkos there, how they do the power play. Does Josi defer a little bit more shots to Stamkos in that situation? But again, like Yosi's got pretty good peripheral coverage too. Like that's a good advantage for him. But yeah, again, I think it's splitting hairs, but I would go Bouchard for upside.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, these guys are so close, as you said. To me, I'm taking Josi here. I've got Josi as sort of the number 2 defenseman off the board for fantasy. But again, I've got both players projected for over 80 points. Like I've got Bouchard projected for 80. I've got Josi for 85. And it's very similar to the previous one here. I think Bouchard might be a little safer just with his role on the team. There's not a lot of change there. So we already know what is sort of to expect with Bouchard, whereas Josi, we did know what to expect, but now the crazy change there in Nashville, like, there's a little bit of variance there with Josi, but I think I'm going to stick with Yosi's ability to drive the offense. Like that's one of the things that he does a lot better than Bouchard. He's leading the rush, and he's the one sort of driving offense when he's out there. Plus he's a shot monster. Bouchard is too. Like they both shoot great for defensemen, but Josi, this guy's a 20-goal threat every year. And I think that's really valuable for fantasy as well. He's got better block numbers. I mean, to me, I think Josi is good no matter what. Whereas Bouchard, if someone like McDavid or Draisaitl gets injured, like that's going to shave a few points off the top, I think. Not that he's super reliant on that. The guy's still going to be a 70-point defenseman, but I just think that Josi has a way higher ceiling. And with these changes in Nashville, I think he could really blast off. Like we could see, a 90-point season for Josi here. So again, splitting hairs, but I'm taking Josi. I think that's a really strong pick. Either of these guys.
Yep, I agree. I mean, if you're in a point in your draft where you're debating between one of those two guys, it's a good problem to have for sure.
Oh, absolutely, buddy. All right, we're taking Josi. We're taking Bouchard. I don't know. I'm taking my licks here from Mike. He's smashing me already. There's only 2 picks in. Oh, God, this feels terrible. All right, now we're moving on. We're going to get to round 5, and we got some up-and-comers here. We got a couple popular names in fantasy, and I'm excited to get your take on this one here, Mike. We're looking at pick 59, and Wyatt Johnston is sitting there staring you in the face, or Tim Stutzle. So, obviously, we like both these players. The ceiling is sky high for both, but who are you picking here? Who are you picking at pick 59?
So I went with Johnston. There might be a little bias in that just because I had Stutzle on my team last year as a keeper.
Oh.
And he kind of had a little bit of a down year for me. So now this year, actually, just a little side note, I've asked Jason this and I wanted to get your take on it. So I'm considering keeping Joel Eriksson over Stutzle this year, just because my league categories it's heavily emphasis on hits and faceoff wins. So I'm trying to make sure I'm not crazy there, because I feel like Eriksson is so coveted, and I'm just petrified to let him go back into the draft pool and someone's going to scoop him up. So whereas I feel like he was pretty comparable to Stutzle last year, but Stutzle might have more high end potential, I think.
But I mean, for me, I would like, I always like to go with offense, like the higher offensive ceiling. So Stutzle obviously has that, but then you mentioned faceoff wins. Like, I mean, you're not crazy at all, right? This guy's bringing crazy periffs. Like, obviously you're talking about a category league. So, I mean, Eriksson.
Yeah, we have hits and pims and blocks.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think you probably holding Eriksson there makes absolute sense, especially with the faceoffs. Plus, he's good to go. He's only 26 or something like that. Like, it's kind of tough to let Stutzle go, in my opinion. We still haven't seen, like, it's kind of a good time to let him go, honestly, because he did have a down year, so we can justify it in our head. But I do feel like Stutzle has, another gear here. I don't think that he's going to, like, 90 points that he got in 22-23. I think that's probably his ceiling or right around his ceiling. So I don't think this is a 100-point player we're talking about here. And he's not going to be very good at faceoffs. I mean, damn, 46% on the faceoff circle, buddy. No, that's terrible. Whereas Jeek, I mean, they're going to get out of cap hell pretty damn soon too. And what is Minnesota going to do when they get some cap clearance there and they can bring in some players to help these guys? So I like that a lot, actually. Sorry, we're digressing, but I'm a big fan of Jeek.
I think that's my plan. And I'll try to draft Stutzle in the first round once I release him. Because I have Elias Pettersson, Jack Hughes, and Bouchard, and I can only keep 4. So it's between Stutzle and Eriksson basically is where I'm at. So,
I like it. That's sneaky and makes total sense. So there you go.
Yep. Yeah. So anyways, I like Johnston too. So a big thing, obviously, Johnston looks like he's going to be really good. I think one thing to keep in mind this year is, like, with Pavelski's retirement, there's going to be a power play 1 spot open, and I think Johnston probably gets it and probably gets those minutes because Pavelski played, I think, like a minute more than Johnston on the power play last year. So I think Johnston could really take advantage of that this year. I mean, he was already kind of like in the middle 6, right? Putting up 60 plus points. Like, I wonder if there's a world where, like, he moves up the lineup and gets more power play time, and we haven't even really seen the best of him. So whereas, like, I know Stutzle right now, it's weird. It feels like one of those guys that a lot of people are going to give up on this year, but then he's also going to probably bounce back and have a really good year too, because he's got a lot of talent. But again, I wouldn't really be devastated with either option, but I would just give a slight edge to Johnston.
Yeah. I like that take a lot. This is, I mean, this year with Wyatt Johnston, like, you're going to have to pay. You're going to have to pay to get this guy on your team. I think that's something you said in your article there. Like,
exactly. He's not going to fall through the cracks anymore.
No, everyone's aware, and rightfully so. Like, Wyatt Johnston on the year, 86 overall in shots to goal per 60, 28th overall in individual scoring chances for per 60 in the league. Wyatt Johnston on the third line, second power play. He's doing that. And then obviously we saw what he did in the playoffs. That said,
playoffs was big.
Yeah. I'm taking Timmy Stutz. Oh, I think it's a little safer. I've got Wyatt Johnston projected for 74, and I've got Stutz projected for 86, which might be a hot take, but I mean, I think there's variance with both players. Obviously, we need to see where Johnston lines up. I have a feeling he's not going to go up to the top line. I think he's going to kind of stick with Jamie Benn and Logan Stanko and put some stank on it. I think that's going to be their line, and that's fine because that was very productive, and he should get power play 1. And I think that's where we get the 74 points, but we just haven't seen it yet with Johnston. And I don't feel exactly comfortable at this range, like expecting a massive point explosion. You know what I'm saying? Like he's already going to have that. Like I've got him projected for 74. He got 65 last year. Does he have ceiling for more? Hell yeah. Like I'm excited about the player. I'm really excited. But in terms of my draft, like I would want more value on Wyatt Johnston because of the risk of it not panning out. Right. Whereas Stutzle, we've seen his ceiling, right? 90 points. I think we know like that's probably not realistic anymore. Like his shooting percentage that year in 2022-23 was like 17%. He's not going to do that again. This isn't a 40 goal scorer, but he had 1 goal on the power play last year. 1.
Yeah.
Timmy Stutz, what are you doing, buddy? That's the no power play, just a power outage. So I really like the bounce back for Stutzle. He was also playing with a shoulder injury all year, which is well documented, and his shooting percentage fell off a cliff, right? Like I said, 17% in 22-23, 9.4% last year. No. All right. That makes no sense for a guy that is getting the amount of scoring chances that Stutzle gets, the power play time, all that stuff. Plus, I am a believer in Travis Green improving this team. I think that it's not going to get worse, right? I liken it to Tocchet coming to the Canucks. Maybe not the exact same situation, but they're similar coaches, right? There's structure, there's accountability, whereas Ottawa did not, like, they didn't know how to play offense. They were terrible in the defensive zone, and they had some of the worst goaltending in the entire league. So I think it's only up from here for Ottawa. And I like, rising tide floats all boats. I think Stutzle is going to be front and center with that. And I like that. I think it's a bit safer pick. So I don't know. What do you think about that, Mike?
Yep. No, fair points too. I think like another maybe like thing to think about with Johnston as far as like, not so much a negative, but I kind of look at Dallas, like they're so deep and they're so balanced. I almost look at them like Carolina. I used to always put like a tax on Carolina players because I always felt like there's only so high they could go in that structured system. And given how they rotate 4 lines, right? Like I always thought like Sebastian Aho, could he be a 90-point player or 95-point player in like Vancouver or Toronto or New York or somewhere else, right? Whereas in Carolina, I know he's going to be like 80, 85 is going to kind of be his sweet spot. So I wonder a little bit about that with Johnston, just because I think Dallas probably has the deepest forward group in the league. Like they could easily just roll 3 or 4 lines all year, and everyone gets maybe a minute less ice time than they would if they were on a thinner team. So yeah, that's another thing to think about. But yeah, Stutzle to me, I feel like he's probably going to have a nice bounce back this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so stoked on Johnston. I want a piece of that. I'm in 9 leagues. That's a guarantee. I'm getting Johnston on one of those leagues. All right. I have to do it. I can't live with myself. Yeah. All right. That's where we're at with that. All right. Let's move on. We're looking at round 8. Okay. We're in the mushy middle of the draft here, and we're looking at pick 95, and we got a couple stud centers that are somehow available at this point. And I chose these 2 players because I think they're both at value on Yahoo in their ADP. So we got Rupe Hintz and John Tavares. Both are, in and around pick 95 on Yahoo. So you're looking for a center. You faded center up to this point, Mike. Who are you taking, Hintz or Tavares?
I went with Hintz, maybe just because I've watched a lot of Tavares and that subtle decline that he's experiencing here in Toronto. And I do think that there's a chance that he could get moved down the lineup too and be sort of like come into that 3C role, depending on what the Leafs do with their lineup. If they play Nylander at center on the second line, or I think there's a lot of options there for them. So that scares me a little bit. And I just think like Hintz, I don't think like Jason Robertson had his best year, and I think he's in for a bounce back. So I'm hoping Hintz with Robertson next year will be a nice connection, and Hintz will have a strong year again. I kind of would project maybe Hintz half a dozen or so more points than Tavares, give or take. But
yeah, no, I'm in the exact same boat. I've got Hintz projected for 77 points. I got JT for 72 points. But that said too, I would take Tavares at this point. I think that he brings a little more to the table in terms of what I'm looking for in like shot and chance generation. So, on the year, JT, we know that he was extremely unlucky last year as well. He couldn't convert worth a damn. This guy was 7th overall in the entire league in individual scoring chances for. 7th. Buddy, what are you doing? You only got 29 goals. I mean, put the biscuit in the basket, JT. I don't know. But Yeah, he also brings some intangibles there, right? Like if you're in a face-off league, you're getting face-off wins. If you're, in any banger format, like 134 hits last year, buddy, he's angry.
Strange there, right? Like he hadn't really done anything until about 2 years ago, and then he's like over 100 hits now for a couple straight years. Which is
like,
weird,
what? I'm angry and I'm taking it out on these people here. So he's doing that. I mean, 46 blocks as well. Very nice. And I think he had such a down year on the power play. That's where I'm seeing JT kind of picking it up, right? Like he went from 39 points in 22-23 power play points to 20 power play points last year in 23-24. And I think that there's definitely some room for improvement on the Leafs power play there. And I'm hoping Craig Berube can sort of unlock that a little bit. Just even as an aside, what do you think about Craig Berube as the new coach of your Toronto Maple Leafs there?
I'm slightly encouraged about it. I think, he's probably in a better position to lead this team at this point than Sheldon Keefe was. I think when Keefe took over for Babcock, it was a good move because he needed to really unlock some of those star players, and he did that. But yeah, I just feel like the Leafs were probably a little too easy to play against sometimes. They kind of walk through different parts of the season. Hoping Berube will kind of change that. I think he needs to kind of create more internal competition, and you mentioned the power play, that's kind of one of my things. I wonder if at some point they split it up a bit and go with like more balanced units, because depending on where like Pacioretty, they have Pacioretty now. I don't know if he's going to end up being a full timer there. Nick Robertson right now is at least re-signed. I'm not sure if he's still going to get moved, but I think Max Domi had some good chemistry with Matthews last year. So I think they actually have some guys now where they could potentially make a second unit. Like if you took Tavares or Marner off the one unit and split them up, and they could have pretty two potent units. But I imagine they'll still load up quite a bit. And yeah, I totally agree. Like Tavares, if you look at his down season, it's all because of just a lack of power play points and a lack of being able to finish last year.
Yeah. And I do really think that's coming back. And then in terms of hints, like I've said this before. I said this to my last guest here, but I really felt like Joe Pavelski sort of brought down that top line a little bit, like just with this lack of speed, and it just became really stagnant. And they, obviously they had the middle six kind of pushing them and playing really well. So I think Pavelski retiring is a net positive for Hintz. I think that him and Robertson are going to bounce back this year. And I think I've got Sagan up there, but I mean, I think Wyatt Johnston could go up there.
Yeah.
If Wyatt Johnston displaces Hintz, I mean, that's an interesting piece as well, because obviously Hintz's value will probably fall off a cliff there in terms of fantasy, right? He's a very valuable player in real life, but I'm still high on Hintz, and both these players, again, ridiculous value in Yahoo. Like this is the reason you fade centers, because you got guys like Rupe Hintz and John Tavares available after pick 90. That's crazy.
Yeah. There's so much depth. It's the deepest position for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We feel good about that. All right. We're going toe to toe. This is like Rock'em Sock'em. Is that your experience as well, Mike?
Yeah. It's a slugfest.
Yeah. Big time. Yeah. All right. It's two friends forced to do battle, right?
Yeah.
Best friends, right? We've confirmed that already, Mike, in one of our last podcasts. All right. Friend of the show, Michael Amato. Yeah, exactly. I know. I don't know where I'm going with that. I'm digressing. It's early and I've got like very little caffeine in my body right now. I need more. Side note, like I drink espresso. I got espresso here. It tastes like crap.
Oh yeah.
Are you a big espresso guy? Like is anybody, or are we just faking it? Is it like IPAs with beer? We're like, yeah, this is really good. And you're like, actually, this tastes like battery acid. Like, why am I drinking this?
I might be one of the 3 Italian people on the planet that don't drink coffee. So I'm not the best to answer that, but I can tell you that my family loves espresso. We have the old like metal pot. We do it right on the stove.
Oh my!
It's a huge Italian thing. Like if you go to an Italian's house of any sort of age of beyond 40, like you're probably going to leave with an espresso or get an espresso while you're there. So it's a delicacy. People love it.
That sounds good to me. But yeah, like some people, we had one of my wife's friends came over recently and she's like really big into espresso. She has like a really fancy machine and she was trying to tell my wife how to like work ours. And she's like, look at the crema, like it needs the crema on top, like this little thing. And I tasted hers. I was like, it doesn't taste any different. I mean, what do are my taste buds just crap? Like maybe that's the situation. That said, I love trying stuff. Like I love like wine tasting, beer tasting, even like I'm not a big drinker, but I love going for tastings, and just kind of getting that experience,
For sure. Yeah, it's if Italians and espresso, it's just like, I don't know, some kind of marriage made in heaven. It's like I grew up with it. I always would smell it. That pot would go right on the
That's awesome.
stove, and before you knew it, like it was everywhere. Yeah.
That's sweet. So
And
what do you do?
tiny amounts, right?
What do you do for your caffeine intake, buddy? I mean, are you just caffeine free? What's happening here?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't drink.
Oh my god.
I pretty much just drink water. Maybe like the occasional hot chocolate. I'm a sucker for like a nice chocolate milk. Like I love a nice. I'm not a big hot drink guy.
Okay, I'm
I
with
don't
you
know.
on that.
I figured that maybe at some point I'll have to convert, because with my kids, you sometimes need caffeine to get through the day, right? I'm sure
Sometimes.
You know that.
What the hell? No, buddy. I need more than caffeine. All right, I'm considering hard drugs. Okay, but that's fine. All right, we're digressing. We love espresso here. That's good. All right. Now we have to move on to the 0G round. Are you still employing 0G, Michael Amato, for your fantasy teams?
Still a big fan of it.
Hell yeah.
I don't know. I always do it. So yeah, I got to think about it, because I love the strategy. I always do really well in my main league that's been around forever. I always, finish top 3, but I'm struggling to like win it all. And I'm wondering sometimes if that ends up burning me at the end is the lack of goaltending, because I had like Joey Decord last year, who was phenomenal for me out of nowhere off waivers, but then he got lit up in the playoffs against Buffalo and basically sunk me. Actually, funny story I should tell you. This is like, you want to talk 0G. So in that opening playoff round, I had Decord, and he started on a Monday against Buffalo and gave up like, I don't know if you remember that game, 4 goals. I think I
remember,
4 goals in the first like 10 minutes. So I abandoned all goalies that week, and I ended up winning my matchup 7-5 still, because we have 8 skater categories and 4 goalie.
Yep.
And so I just I said, I'm not going to try and use my waiver moves to grab goalies. I'm just going to, because I was already, my numbers were horrible. So I ended up winning 7 of the 8 skaters. And then I managed to move on to the semis, where I lost a tight one, because by that point, my goalies were thin. But yeah, it's kind of wild how far you can get with it. But sometimes it is nice to have that security of like a Shesterkin or a Hellebuck. But I just think when you're drafting, it's far more difficult to find like a gem of a skater in the 12th or 13th round, whereas it feels like it's not that hard with a goalie. You can always find a goalie that late that has to, or even off waivers. Sometimes you just wait for the first week or two, look how teams are shaping up, and you can find somebody.
It's so true, man. And I think there's a misnomer about 0G is we're just constantly just going to the waiver wire. Like the idea with 0G is to get a goalie that you can hold for as long as he can, right? Like obviously, Decord, the wheels fell off. I had to drop him too. I had him everywhere. Ingram too, right? So, but I love that. Punting goalies is a legit strategy in category leagues. I did the same thing. And mine didn't really work out, but I mean, my skaters weren't really performing. That was more the issue, but I'm such a big fan of 0G, especially when you got guys like these 2 guys we're talking about here around pick 135, Darcy Kemper or Jordan Binnington. Who are you taking of these 2 studs?
I like Kemper just because when I draft goalies, like when I'm doing 0G, I tend to draft based on their respective team more than the confidence I have in the actual goalie itself. So when I look at the Kings, everyone says they play this boring style, which, it's probably true, but it's great for, fantasy hockey goalies, right? Like we've seen it in Carolina have a lot of success. So, when you think of the guys they've made fantasy relevant in the last few years, whether it's like Phoenix Copley or Jonas Corposalo or Cam Talbot or David Riddick, like I think Kemper is probably better than all those guys. And I actually think he's kind of been forgotten about, just kind of a couple of injury-filled and tough seasons in Washington. So I think you could probably get him very late, and he's pretty like he can play 50+ games easily, right? Like Kemper. So I think to go back to your point earlier about it's not so much you're flipping goalies all the time; it's you're trying to look for a guy that you can keep, right? It's not it's not streaming, it's finding a 0G guy that you can keep. I think maybe Kemper could be that guy. Like he could be that guy in the 13th round for you or something that, he ends up staying on your roster for most of the year.
Yeah, I love that. And I picked Kemper as well. I mean, Bennington obviously had an amazing year last year, whereas Kemper didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy stunk
Yeah.
last year and lost the crease to Charlie Lindgren. But I mean, the
Yeah.
environment in Washington, not great. All right. Obviously,
No.
that's been well documented. Their goal differential, their inability to get any offense going. Like, I've talked a lot this year about Ovechkin's decline. Like, I know it's a great story, and I think he will break the record, but I think them trotting him out there is not helping the team, or trying, like, I'm happy for what they did in the offseason. Anyways, that's Washington. But moving over to LA here, like, yeah, exactly like you said. Cam Talbot is a prime example. This guy, he's not an amazing tendy. He's like he's a veteran guy, structurally sound, but the Kings made him like one of the best goalie options, certainly in the first half of the year last year with their goalie environment. So I'd rather bank on that as well for 0G. Whereas Bennington, like, this guy played out of his mind last year. He was 17.24 goals saved above average, which is like, in the upper echelon of the league, right? But he was required to do that. If he didn't do that, the St. Louis Blues are losing a crap ton of games, right? Whereas I think that Kemper with the Kings, he's going to be sheltered a bit. Whereas, like, for fantasy, if we choose Bennington, we're now expecting that he's going to play out of his mind for a second straight year. And that's not something I want to bank on for fantasy, even though I think Bennington is a very good 0G target, right? But if I had to choose between the two, I'm taking the goalie environment in LA all day. And like you said, Kemper, I've got him in so many spots in drafts that I've already done. People are fading this guy. I feel perfectly fine picking him up. Like, who's his competition? Phoenix Copley? Like, I mean, it could be a 1A, 1B situation, Riddick, but I mean, he's going to get over 50 starts. I think that's good enough for me, and probably some pretty damn nice rate stats as well. So I don't know. That's where I'm at there.
Yeah, he should.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, he's definitely going to be good value for where you can get him. Like, I did basically what you described. I took Cam Talbot last year in like the 16th round or something. Just that was to me more of a gamble because of Talbot's age, but I think Kemper's going to be fine. Like you said with Binnington, there's just way too much like year to year variance, right? Like, he could be phenomenal at times, then he looks like he's borderline should be out of the league at other times, right? Like, really, it's so risky. And I think, like you said, the Blues aren't anywhere near as good as the Kings. So, and I think just wins, right? Like, even last year, Binnington was good value, but his wins weren't like some of the other high end and goalies, right? Because the team just wasn't as strong. So it's, that's the other thing. It's tough to really, it's very rare you can roster a goalie on a bad team. I think, like we mentioned a couple, like the Cord was a rare exception to that last year, whereas like the Kraken weren't so good, but he actually had some good value. But yeah, it gets tricky. I think Kemper, it's the same reason why I wouldn't really call him a 0G guy this year, but like Kochetkov for the last 3 years, it felt like was a 0G guy just because, you can pretty much put anybody in the Carolina net, including a Zamboni driver, apparently, and they'll be fine, right?
They do that. It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why when I'm drafting goalies late, I try to look at the team, the defensive structure. And basically another thing too is like, how does that coach of that team kind of rotate the goalies? Like, do they rotate them frequently? Do they lean on one guy, right? Where I think they would lean on Kemper if he's healthy and the Kings are playing good. So it's a big advantage there.
Yeah, and plus he's just coming off a really down season. The guy played terribly. I mean, his goal saved above average was -11, right? Where he's been a plus guy for the previous 2 seasons. In fact, 4 of the last 5. So he's really good. Good underlying numbers. I think he's going to really shine in LA. And you want to get a piece of this, all right? A little bit safer to me over Bennington. Anyways, we got to get to our last picks here, Mike. It's the sleeper round. All right, we're just taking flyers on guys that we think are going to do well. We're around pick 165. And we're staring at Tyler Toffoli or Gustav Nyquist of the Nashville Predators. Who are you taking there?
Maybe, weirdly, I'm taking Toffoli. I mean, Nyquist had maybe one of the strangest seasons I can ever remember. A career year, 70-something points at age 35. Like, you never see that. And that whole Nashville top line last year, I kept saying like, oh, they're going to regress. And they never did. Like, O'Reilly was great. Forsberg, obviously phenomenal season, and Nyquist there. So yeah, I just think he's probably due for some regression there. also, there's a lot more wingers now, whether it's Stamkos or Marchessault there, that could potentially bump him off that line. So yeah, I'm not as high on Nyquist this year, but I'm kind of weirdly, when I was making my rankings, I kept like, I kept wanting to put like a lot of Sharks in there because I'm like, they went from the worst roster to now I'm looking at guys like Eklund and Zetterlund, and not high, but I feel like these are like depth forwards that could be effective. And obviously like Celebrini and Will Smith are there, and Toffoli feels like, he can score 30 goals in his sleep. So I don't know, I'd probably just bet on Toffoli, but I could see them also being Toffoli or Nyquist end up finishing with a similar amount of points.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting conversation just because, I mean, Toffoli with New Jersey and Winnipeg last year, 55 points in 79 games. Yeah. And like you said, Nyquist had, 75 points in 81 games, career high 35. What the hell is happening?
Yeah.
And a lot of that was on the back of 24 power play points. Right. And I think that's where it becomes a conversation between Nyquist and Toffoli, because does Nyquist get power play one? It seems like I'm leaning towards no, because you got Marchessault in there. I think it's going to be between him and Marchessault on that power play. Obviously, Nyquist has some chemistry with that top unit, but he's also on a contract year where they've just signed Marchessault for term, right? So are they going to go with the guy, the contract year guy, or are they going to play their guy that they've got for a few years and see what they have there? So I think without power play one, it's Toffoli all day. And obviously we like Toffoli because shots and chances, that's what he does. 47th overall in the league in shots and goal per 60 last year, 41st overall in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. I mean, the scoring chances are probably going to go down because he's he's in San Jose. It's not the sharpest team in the world, but I mean, the shots are not going to go away. This guy's a shot monster. And plus I think he's actually going to get more ice time. Like he's the priority there now. You got Celebrini, who's going to be your number one center. I think Toffoli's his winger, right? That's going to be sick. This whole offseason, I found myself talking about the San Jose Sharks a lot more than I thought I would, because like you said, I like Eklund a lot too. That's a player I'm pretty high on. I mean, as a sleeper, right? You're not going to go out and, prioritize William Eklund, at least not right now. But I do think Toffoli of that group, it's Toffoli and Celebrini are the two players that I'm really interested in on San Jose. And yeah, 30 goals. Could he get it with the San Jose Sharks? Maybe. I don't know. And he brings more periffs to the table as well. 75 hits. So I think we're together on Toffoli there.
Yep, 100%. If you go back and look at like the last 15 games for Eklund and Zetterlund last year on the Sharks, like they were scoring at a good pace, like almost a point per game. I really think they're going to take a step. So yeah, the Sharks could be, at least more fun this year to watch.
Yeah. I like the new coach as well. Like he had a quote that came out and he was just saying like, regardless like of whatever happens, like we're going to be a fun team to watch. We're not going to be boring. And like, that's the type of crap I want to hear. It's like, yeah, all right. That sounds awesome. Like with the offensive players you have. And Celebrini, this guy, I think this guy's legit. Like, obviously he's legit, but he could be legit as soon as next season. And he's going to be fed minutes. Yeah. He's going to get a ton of minutes. What do you see Celebrini doing this year?
Yeah, I think I don't see him as like an immediate sort of like generational talent as like a Bedard or McDavid, but I think he could be really good. Really a productive fantasy option. Maybe this year, I think I have him like maybe like 55, 60 points in a kind of a best case scenario. But I'm of the mind, like with my last few picks, if you're talking about like a 1 year league, let's say, like I would always try and take a chance on some younger players instead of, grabbing a guy you could just get off waivers in 2 weeks anyway, right? Take a chance on a Will Smith, on a Celebrini. I'm definitely not like a prospect guru by any means, but I've heard a couple people kind of compare him a little bit to like Jonathan Toews. So I don't know if that means he's going to be more of like a 75, 80 point guy, but just a really good two-way player too, which is awesome. But it's maybe not like the high end in fantasy hockey, but I think eventually he's going to be quite good.
Yeah. It's weird to say I'm excited to watch San Jose this year, but Will Smith too. This guy's amazing. He's an amazing playmaker. I'm just interested to see where these guys all line up. And Fabian Zetterlund, he's getting kind of lost in the mix there, but he had a nice little season there at the end. Anyways, we're yammering on about the San Jose Sharks, which, that's a lot of airtime for that team, but that's fine. They were literally the worst team I've ever seen last year. Remember that stretch of hockey where it was like they lost 10-0 twice? What?
I went to a game with my dad, the Leafs Sharks game last year. And I think the Leafs won like 8-1 or 8-2 or something. It was ugly. It's one of the worst teams I've seen in person. Like it was
Oh
wild.
yeah, very bad. Do you play hockey, Mike?
Yeah, I'm on a beer league team.
Yeah, like those are the nights where you're like, yes, points night. Oh, sweet. I'm gonna pad my stats tonight. Yeah, I don't even care. Did I get an assist on that one? Okay, good. Yeah, I think that feels good. So, anyways, that's that, Michael. Thank you so much for this battle. I mean, you smashed me as usual, just like you did last year. All right, but it's not how many times you fall down; it's how many times you get back up. Am I right, Mike?
That's it. I'm sure we'll do it again next year.
Oh, dang. You bet your sweet Bippy. I want to get you in season as well. Before I let you go here, why don't you let us know about your socials and also maybe talk a little bit about Sleepers and Keepers Fantasy Hockey Podcast, which is an amazing podcast you need to check out, and sort of what we can expect from you guys this season.
Sure. Yeah. You can follow me on Twitter at Amato_Mike, or I guess X as it's called now. But yeah, Jason and I are back for another season, Sleepers and Keepers pod at the Hockey News. New episodes every Monday. We're doing some preview stuff right now, and yeah, it's kind of a good mix of kind of analysis, and we definitely open it up to the public, so we have a big portion of just kind of answering questions, because that's kind of how I connected with a lot of people in fantasy hockey, and we wanted to sort of take that to the podcast world. So yeah, it's a good interactive thing. I think we'll have some fun, other exciting stuff coming too.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things you guys do is your mailbag episodes. And then Jason Chen, all-time beauty. All right, this guy's a legend, just like you, Mike.
Great guy. He's keeps the podcast together for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, he's a glue guy. All right, shout out to Jason Chen, shout out to Michael Amato, and shout out to Sleepers and Keepers, and shout out to our listeners. Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate your time. We got more content locked and loaded with this. This train doesn't stop here at Apples and Ginos. We get the biz on the regular, and it feels right. So stay tuned for more content. But until then, celebrate your day. Bye for now.